Alright, today once again we're going to be talking about the Bitcoin price action, where I think price is likely to head in the near term and long term future, kind of giving some predictions on the market and what I think is most likely, starting off with CME, because we do have this CME gap that we had created last weekend, and in my last video I said it structurally wouldn't make a whole lot of sense to go back and test that, and I think that was bad wording because it actually would structurally make a lot of sense to go back there, especially because as we can see that's right above the golden pocket. So on any move up on Bitcoin, it mathematically makes the most sense to actually come back, test that golden pocket before continuation upwards. But just given where we are in the cycle, potentially we have been consolidating in this macro range for about 6 months. Usually after Bitcoin consolidates for long periods of time like this, it has impulsive moves, such as back when we had the ETF consolidation. You see this big impulsive move to the upside, and I think we could be similar to right here, because we're still within the range, right? We haven't broken out, but we already had that flush to the downside, that big capitulation, and now we shouldn't really see price really want to even retest that range, and it should just kind of chop for a little bit and then shoot on up. If we pulled fibs on this, we can see that only retraced back to the 382. So I think very similar thing could happen here. I do expect, potentially a bit more of a retrace. Not necessarily saying the bottom is in right now, although it could be just because of some hidden hourly divs that we do have. But I would expect, on a liquidity basis, makes sense to grab all of this because we do have a lot of late longers that opened up after this short squeeze, right? Short squeezes into longs opening, very likely to go ahead and retrace that, sweep that liquidity before continuing on upwards, but that 382 does come in right above the CME gap. So I think, with everyone looking at this CME gap, all eyes are on it. Why wouldn't price just front run it, trap the most amount of positions? That could be the play for market makers. But yeah, even though I have my opinions, I think a pullback here does make a whole lot of sense to go ahead and fill that gap. And that would actually be very bullish for Bitcoin because you don't really want to be leaving these gaps behind. Historically, these do get filled at some point. I know there's a couple that never did. If we look on a daily time frame, we go all the way back to around $20,000. There's this gap down here that never got filled. We even have this gap still in the charts all the way from 9K, although this one did get partially filled, so I wouldn't even count that as leaving it behind, really. But yeah, definitely right here, $20,000. We left this gap, and I actually do think that's going to get retraced at some point. If my thesis does come true of a Great Depression 2.0 with what the S&P is doing, unemployment rates, some other macroeconomic factors, I do believe Bitcoin would come all the way back down to lower than the bear market range. I know a lot of people are going to think I'm crazy for that, but I think the 12K targets could potentially actually get hit this time. But that depends on so many other factors, such as, is Bitcoin truly just going to act like a risk on asset like it has been in the tech sector, or is it going to decorrelate from the stock market and act more like gold? And I do think there is actually the big potential for Bitcoin to transfer into more of a risk off asset, especially if there are concerns with the US dollar, etc. But that's entirely speculation. Who knows really what's going to happen in a Great Depression scenario for Bitcoin. So let's get back into the shorter term time frames now. On my normal chart on Binance outside of CME, we do see that if we look at our RSI divergences, we do continually have hidden 1 hour bull divs coming in here, higher lows on price, lower lows on the RSI. These will often overpower your regular bear divs, so I would not be surprised if this is to play out and we do just head on up here. I just said we had one yesterday, so we did have a hidden hourly bull div yesterday. Clearly that did not become the low, but we're still holding these hidden hourly bull divs. These are still valid until this low gets broken, and even when that low does get broken, assuming we do come down here to sweep it, we would still be creating hidden hourly bull divs. We're going to continue to have these on the chart with any pullbacks here, just given how low RSI is. So that's a very bullish indication on the charts overall. You can see this gray box is that CME gap that I had marked out, and we do see the big support resistance flip of these two ranges here on Bitcoin is this white line that comes across, and that is right within the midpoint of that CME gap. So if we were to fill this is where I think we would find support, but a sweep down to grab these lows within here would not be out of the question either. That would test the value area high of this range within here. So yeah, essentially to the downside, these are my two levels to still be watching out for. These will be big long opportunities in my opinion if we do get sweep structures within them. But once again, as I had stated in last video, this 64.5 level is a big support resistance flip of the macro range within here. I had said when we broke down below the range, when everyone was panicking down here, that if you were bearish, you would look to sell on the retrace. You do not sell into support, you sell into resistance. And if you really thought the bear market was over, this is where you were looking to sell. And now, since we have rejected that resistance line, I do see the case to be made if you are super bearish, which I'm not, right? I think we're going to all-time highs. I do see the case where Bitcoin could just go down from here, and that is why I'm looking to potentially take out some hedge shorts at this level. Unfortunately, Bitcoin just keeps retracing into the highs while I'm asleep, so I can't get into those hedge shorts. But I'm not too worried about it because what I'm seeing on the charts across the board indicates to me Bitcoin is certainly probably most likely going to all-time highs, because that does seem like the scenario that would just wrong foot the most amount of market participants, and that is what Bitcoin likes to do. If we went ahead and squeezed up to all-time highs, you're going to see euphoria resume back into the markets, and you're going to grab all of this short liquidity from these poor highs within here. If I pull up the liquidation heat map, you can see to the downside there's really not much liquidity, and this could be another reason why we don't fill that CME gap, because there's nothing to really grab below $60,000. While yes, there's certainly liquidity behind this low. This is what I was talking about grabbing, right? A sweep structure there. Down here there's really not much, so on a liquidity basis, right, it does make sense to kind of just continue on up here, because we still have a ton sitting to the upside. The fact that we came up here and made these highs and consolidated here just built a whole lot more liquidity up above the 66k level that did not exist before. And as we start hunting this, we are going to absolutely magnet up to all-time highs. With all of these poor highs sitting in here, we are likely to have a big stop punt into this level, and after that liquidity is grabbed, then that is when Bitcoin needs to prove itself. The buyers really need to show that fair value for Bitcoin is much higher, and it was not just a short squeeze to grab that liquidity, because that kind of is my base case at the moment. I think it might play out like Wyckoff upthrust after distribution, where we squeeze up into the highs, potentially consolidate here, fake everyone out because they think support is being built. We wick up one more time, and then this becomes a deviation back within the range, and then we go ahead and fail value area high once again. Once you accept back in this range after breaking out, I think it would be pretty safe to assume the bull market is over at that point, and I personally will be selling my spot bags in that sort of scenario, especially because of just what my base case has been due to monetary policy, unemployment rate, etc. My original thesis for a top was actually in April. I have been pushing that back because of what the Fed has been doing with interest rates. I'm waiting for them to cut, as well as the presidential election. I think there's going to be a big sell the news event, especially now with everyone predicting Trump's going to be in office. Everyone thinks that's going to be super bullish for the markets. I don't think so. I don't think Trump's going to be able to prevent us from a Great Depression. I think it is kind of a controlled demolition with what the Fed is doing. While I think there's a good chance we can now stay out of World War III for the next 4 years, I'm still very confident that a depression type scenario will begin going into 2025 and beyond, and that is truly where everyone gets wrong-footed. We come up into all-time highs through September, getting closer to election season. Everyone's pricing in Trump's going to be elected. Everybody sees the rate cuts and thinks it's super bullish. They're like, monetary policy's loosening, and the bull run's just beginning, right? Bitcoin's breaking out into all-time highs. It's backtesting the all-time highs into support. Oh my goodness, it's going for it. It's going to go to $300,000. This is truly the super cycle for Bitcoin, and then we swing fail, deviate back within. That's the top right there, and everybody gets massively wrong-footed. That's my base case, and I'm absolutely open to being proven wrong. I'm not strict on this case whatsoever. If we come up here and we see just buying pressure throughout this trend, there's not a lot of shorts getting squeezed. In fact, a lot of shorts start piling in on the top. Everyone starts calling for the same scenario as me. Then yeah, there's a good chance Bitcoin just fires off and we go straight to $200,000 to $300,000. I don't think those price targets are completely unrealistic at all, even to happen by the end of this year. So there's also the other case where we don't have a bull market in 2025, but we still have this 2017 style blow off top that happens very fast, but sends prices into multiple six figures. So there's a lot of scenarios that could play out. It is very speculative, and that's why we're just going to have to take price action day by day. But I just wanted to give you my thoughts there. Looking over here on Trading Light now, let me go ahead and move Bybit over to the side, and you will see we have all these green boxes. What are these? These are single prints from inefficiencies in the chart where we went through the daily sessions very quickly. Bitcoin likes to retrace into these, so again, my targets align very nicely with these single prints. Either we tap top side, which is just a sweep of all these late longers. You can see on open interest within here, we had a lot of longs opening after the short squeeze. So right, this was a squeeze, then we have positions opening longs are opening throughout this range, but throughout the uptrend, there's actually more shorts being closed than longs being opened, showing that the trend is weakening and showing that we were likely to roll over. But you might notice we have more single prints to the downside as well, and these actually come in very nicely with the CME gap. If we were to fulfill all of these, that would put us right at the bottom side of that CME gap, right at 58,800. So once again, these are clearly the two levels I have identified. If we were to have a pullback here, which I do think is probably the most likely scenario. I should also mention we have this daily 50 EMA coming in here. This is a big support resistance flip level. So this could be another confluence to say we shouldn't actually come down to the CME gap, and it makes more sense to just kind of come down here, grab the liquidity, get back above the daily EMA before a continuation on up higher, just like we had back down here in January. You can see a deviation under the daily EMA, gets back above, holds it into support before the continuation on up higher. Now let's talk about some other charts, because we did see some pretty volatile price action here on the S&P and dollar. Starting off with the S&P 500, we saw a massive capitulation to the downside, but this is actually very bullish in my opinion, because it grabbed all of these poor lows within here. You can see if we were to draw at a sweep level right there, perfect swing failure of all of these bad lows within here while still maintaining the higher lows on the daily time frame. But I will say this is potentially a sign of weakness in the parabola. So this could align with the Wyckoff upthrust after distribution. The S&P comes up here, makes a higher high, but this is the distribution phase where you get that daily bearish divergence, weekly bearish divergence coming in there before the top finally does come in. And this would be a macro top for the S&P that does go all the way back to 1964 on the parabola. This is a futures index, so it doesn't even show all the way back to there. But if I go over to the TVC markets, you can see what I'm talking about. Yeah, this is why I think we're going to enter the Great Depression, because these parabolas don't last forever. And when something this substantial does finally top out, you're going to see some dark times ahead of us. And this is where you get the case for a potential 12K Bitcoin if it is to continue to correlate as a risk on asset in the stock market. So this is something to definitely watch closely. This is a solid swing fail. I don't think this should get retraced. If we continue down here, that's going to look very bearish. As long as we just kind of rip back up here with haste, flip this stuff into support and continue on up, I think this is where you will see Bitcoin go absolutely parabolic, because I think there's a big rotation in the stock market right now. Getting out of higher cap stuff and rotating it into the risk that we can see from the Russell 2000. We saw a massive breakout here in the daily time frame, getting us back up into the bull market range. Clear rejection of the value area high of that bull market range, and now back under the point of control. Let's see if this can get reclaimed, or at a minimum for us to just confirm the value area low as support. That makes sense to retrace back into, since we never tested it on the way up. But this is something to watch carefully. Because we had talked about if we were to swing fail under this level on the weekly time frame, that would look very, very bearish. We only have around 24 hours left to close out the week though, so I do think we're going to be confirming within this range. So we'll continue to watch the Russell carefully, but the fact we were able to even get up into this range is very bullish for our risk on assets. And something else that is extremely bullish is the fact that the dollar has broken down here. And while we did see a big move up here on the dollar, with this move up, with the S&P falling like it did, Bitcoin has held up extremely well, and I think that's a very good sign for the crypto market in general. When the dollar does continue its downtrend, which I do expect, right? We're not making higher highs or anything like that. Assuming we do continue down here, the target remains the bottom side of this range, and I think Bitcoin is going to absolutely fly now that it is showing strength. But let's continue to stay vigilant in the markets. We are still at a critical level for Bitcoin and a lot of your other charts. But if you do have any questions or just want to join the community for this channel, link to my Discord is at the top of the description down below. You'll also see a VIP Discord if you want to get 50% off on that. It's only $20 a month for the first 3 months right now. Make sure to check that out. It's specifically for leveraged traders, by the way. And then also I'm partnered with BingX. We have an event going on for the month of July right now to get some really awesome rewards just by completing some simple tasks on their exchange. So make sure to go check that out as well. And with that being said, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.